Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome National Kidney Foundation Executive Director, Amy Hewitt.
Good evening, everyone. I am Amy Hewitt, Executive Director for the National Kidney Foundation serving Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. Thank you so much for joining us for our 32nd annual Authors Luncheon VIP event. As we all know, 2020 has been anything but typical. Even in all of its uncertainty, what has persisted is our creativity and our willingness to collaborate, even as we navigate new territory. As a result, we do things like take a 32-year tradition and pivot. And while we would prefer to be meeting in person, circumstances have certainly dictated otherwise. So instead, we embrace this virtual opportunity and the fact that we have friends, both old and new, joining us from all parts of the US. So welcome and thank you for being here. Tonight will be something quite special. After our opening comments, you will be treated to a panel discussion with our presenting authors led by the wonderful Michael Krasny. I'm not sure this is something we've ever been able to do in authors history, so I'm really looking forward to it. Before we get started, I'd like to share my most heartfelt thanks to our local NKF board, led by Rick Barnett, President and CEO of Satellite Healthcare. I would also like to thank today's sponsors for their extraordinary generosity and commitment to the Authors Luncheon and the kidney community. Authors Circle sponsors, Satellite Healthcare and Wilson Dow. Silver sponsors, Ardelyx, Kaiser Permanente, Union Bank. Our Nobel Prize sponsors, Ann Barr and Fred Madison, and Stanford Children's Health, Lucille Packard Children's Hospital. As well as our Pulitzer Prize sponsors, it's a mouthful, Judy and Robert Aptekar, the Copeland family, EY, Tracy Keogh and HP Inc., Lapidos Leung and Francis, Latham and Watkins, Ellen and Agnes Mendelsohn, and Outset Medical. Truly heartwarming to have this steadfast commitment from all of you who are here tonight. It means the world to me and to our community. It is now my pleasure to introduce the event chair of the 32nd Annual Authors Luncheon, Sheila Gordon. Thank you, Sheila, so much for your partnership and your leadership and your friendship. We would not be here today without your vision and commitment. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sheila. I feel sad, but grateful. I'm sad we can't all be together in the same room, but I'm so grateful for all of you for standing with us and staying with us while we pivot for tonight's event. First, I really want to thank Amy. Amy is extraordinary. She has been an amazing partner in this journey, and she's even put up with me with patience. So I want to thank her from the bottom of my heart, and the entire staff, especially Colleen and Patty, for all your hard work. We also want to, of course, thank the authors. They are the lifeblood of this event, and we are so grateful to them. My authors committee are stellar, and they really supported this pivot and this event. So we want to really thank them. And the executive leadership committee with Jessica Bear as its head has done a remarkable job this year. Wilson Dow, our production company. What can I say? You guys are rock stars. You took everything we wanted and turned it into a reality, and we're so grateful. You should look at our sponsor page and see all the magic that Wilson Dow can do. It's just remarkable. And let me also thank the J. Lohr family, Cynthia and Lawrence. We love being a part of their family, and they're being a part of ours. I also want to thank Kristen Green and Lou Sherwood for their help with our publicity this year. And lastly, a great thank you to Elaine Petrocelli and Book Passage. Karen West has been such a help getting authors every year, and we are incredibly grateful to her. And Elaine has become my personal friend and a great friend of the Kidney Foundation. So I'm going to turn it over to Elaine. I would only say to you, I urge you to go to their website. They are having some wonderful events right now that I know you would enjoy. Thank you. I hope to see you next year in person, and I'll give you all a big hug. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. It's such a pleasure that to be here, and I really want to thank our authors. I know that you have lots of people wanting you to do lots of things, and it means so much to me and everyone at Book Passage and all of my friends at the Kidney Foundation that you are supporting this important event. I really cannot thank you enough. When we had this happen and we started talking about our dream team of authors, we came up with a list and it happened. I can't believe it. So thank you, Britt Bennett, author of The Vanishing Half, Marcia Goldman, author of Lola Goes to Work, John Grisham, A Time for Mercy, for Eric Larson, who has been with us before, who has come back for The Splendid and the Vile, to Jason Rosenthal, whose late wife, Amy, was so much a part of what we do, and for his wonderful book, My Wife Said You May Want to Marry Me, to Gail Sukiyama for the beautiful book set in Hawaii, The Color of Air, and most certainly for our dear friend, Michael Krasny. I used to come to the Kidney Foundation as a guest, and I have to tell you that something magic happened when Michael Krasny stepped in to be the host. It just changed everything because this is a man with so much heart and intellectual heft that it brought us to a new space. Michael, as many of you know, is the host of Forum on NPR on our local, that comes from our local channel, KQED. This radio program is a must listen to. Michael has been doing this, I think, since 1997. Maybe I have the date wrong, but all I know is that I love Forum because I know I will always be surprised if Michael is the host. Whether it is a business person who maybe has something to hype, Michael somehow finds a way to get him to talk. Whether it's a person who is a leader in politics, Michael gets something said that the person never meant to say. So be careful, authors. I once had an author announce when Michael was introducing him on stage that he was getting a divorce, and I don't know if the man's wife knew it. So I'm just telling you, this is the world's greatest interviewer. He is in great demand as an interviewer for many, many organizations, including Book Passage, where we have constantly counted on him. Michael is a professor emeritus at San Francisco State University, where he was, where Dr. Krasny was a professor of literature. Excuse me a moment. And I have run into so many of his former students who have come to Book Passage as authors. He is a great mentor of new talent. And in fact, the MC tomorrow during the luncheon, Kelly Corrigan, was Michael's student, and she says that it is because of Michael that she was inspired to become a writer. So I thank you, Michael, from the bottom of my heart, and also for your own great books that we have celebrated here. Off Mic, a memoir of talk radio, Spiritual Envy, one of my favorites, An Agnostic's Quest, and the most recent wonderful one, Let There Be Laughter. And so, Michael, thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you for that lovely introduction. A bit overwhelming, I must say. You gave me 4 years, less than the time I've been hosting the Forum program. Just want to get that on the record. I'm coming up on 28 years the day after Valentine's Day. And good evening, everybody. Welcome. Delighted to be here. And it's my pleasure to once again take part in this year's events as tonight's Master of Ceremonies. I've had the pleasure and the honor, really, to help the National Kidney Foundation raise awareness and funds for the past 25 years, and I never imagined it would take on this format. But I'm grateful that we can be here together tonight, virtually, from the safety of our homes. I'm actually at Book Passage, and there are a lot of patients who are grateful as well. Grateful you're here. On behalf of the National Kidney Foundation and the kidney patient community, thank you for being part of this. And as Elaine mentioned, we once again feature an extraordinary and talented group of authors who I look forward to talking with shortly. It will be a unique opportunity to lead them in a panel discussion, although maybe talking with each of them individually as well. The writing represents, as it always does for this event, a broad swath of different types of genres and subgenres, and we've got writers of all kinds of distinction here. In my 25 years of emceeing this event, it's not something that I've had the pleasure of doing, that is leading in a discussion, but I'm certainly chomping at the bit and willing and glad to do it. One thing that remains the same this year is the generosity of our friends at J. Lohr Vineyards and Wines, who have generously donated the wines I hope you are enjoying tonight. And I also ought to add that 2020 is the 14th year as the exclusive wine sponsor for the Authors Luncheon. And tonight we have Cynthia Lohr, who is co-owner and Chief Brand Officer, here with us. In honor of their many years of partnership, I've asked her to lead us in a toast. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you very much, Michael, and it's such a treat to be with all of you tonight. I, too, wish to thank extended family members Sheila Gordon, Amy Hewitt, of course, the Petrocelli family. Michael, thank you. We have grown up listening to Forum, and then certainly Rick Barnett, as he is due to come up, our esteemed authors, and of course, all of the generous sponsors. I must say that for the Lohr family, which consists of our founder, my father, Jerry Lohr, my older brother, Steve Lohr, CEO, and my younger brother, Lawrence Lohr, who's COO of our vineyards, this is a favorite family event. For 14 years, we haven't missed a year. In honor of our partnership, we always do all of our Christmas shopping at every single Authors Luncheon event, and it has become an opportunity to never miss. You provide us with so much inspiration, so much raison d'etre in our creative lives. I want to thank all of you, the authors, especially. For our 14-year partnership, we go back a little further than that. We are coming up soon on 50 years of family wine grape growing and winemaking. And if you think of anything when you get to know J. Lohr, we wish to ask you to think of 3 words: family, place, and craft. Family, because we have truly built our brand over these almost 50 years through the kind gestures of our accounts, our distributors, our family of colleagues, and our extended family of folks like you. Place, certainly my father had a vision to put roots down in California's Central Coast, and our primary growing regions are Paso Robles, where we grow the bulk of our red wines, Monterey County's Arroyo Seco and Santa Lucia Highlands, where we grow the bulk of our white wines, and then lastly, St. Helena and Napa Valley. And then craft. We're never resting on our laurels. We're always looking to improve the quality in everything we do. That's one of the benefits of being a vertically integrated family owned and operated winery. We are able to turn those levers of control that allow us quality from vineyard to bottle. So we've carefully selected the wines that we hope you're enjoying tonight, or if you've shared with others, or if you're looking to save them for another time. The 2018 J. Lohr Arroyo Vista Vineyard Chardonnay from our Cool Climate Estate Vineyards in Monterey County's Arroyo Seco, where the large potato-sized stones at the end of the day hold on to the sun that has been radiated across the day and works to essentially offer longer hang time for the fruit, resulting in very ripe, rich flavors. And then our second vintage now of our Shotwell Vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon in Paso Robles, a newer parcel for us where we have focused for many, many years on Chardonnay and Cabernet. We have now introduced a number of winery exclusive wines to tantalize palates everywhere, and we hope that you enjoy this offering whenever it may happen. But let's have an incredible evening, a beautiful author's luncheon tomorrow, and let's have a toast, shall we?
Well, thank you, Cynthia and Jay Lore. And indeed, we raise a toast and raise a glass to 32 years of the Authors Luncheon. Next, I want to introduce Rick Barnett. He's president and CEO of Satellite Healthcare. For more than 45 years, Satellite has partnered with the National Kidney Foundation to improve the quality of life for patients. And we're grateful to have Rick with us here tonight to say a few words. Rick?
Thank you, Michael. Hi, I'm Rick Barnett, and I'm a board chair of National Kidney Foundation for the West Coast, and it's my pleasure to be with you tonight. I've had the pleasure of attending this Authors Luncheon event for the past 6 years, and this weekend may look different, but it's always a unique experience. It's one of our National Kidney Foundation's most extraordinary events. You're not only here to celebrate renowned, best-selling authors, but your participation is transforming kidney care disease and improving the lives of millions of Americans. With COVID-19 cases continuing to surge, your support has taken on a whole new meaning this year. Kidney patients continue to face an unprecedented threat to their health and safety, given heightened risk of serious illness and the need to continue treatment while navigating this pandemic. Even more terrifying, COVID-19 patients are becoming kidney disease patients. This virus has also left hospitalized COVID-19 patients with permanent kidney damage. I'm so proud of the many ways our community has stepped up to meet the needs of patients, especially our healthcare heroes. Thank you. As a part of our ongoing engagement with the incoming Biden-Harris administration, NKF recently sent a detailed letter outlining top kidney health priorities intended to inform the new administration's first 100-day agenda. We urge the incoming administration to prioritize kidney patients as it responds to COVID-19 and administers vaccinations. We also advocate that they'll increase federal investment in kidney health and research by creating a special kidney disease fund, create an office of transplantation within the Department of Health and Human Services to improve our broken transplantation system, and also to prioritize kidney transplantations and expand and build upon the success of the Advancing American Kidney Health Initiative set out by the federal government. I'm so pleased with the National Kidney Foundation and Satellite Healthcare Foundation in partnership. We have worked together for over 45 years. Our missions align almost identically in our efforts to improve outcomes for kidney patients. This is why events like the Authors event are important and why Satellite supports this event and almost all other National Kidney Foundation events. This provides hope for what the future holds. That's why your support of the National Kidney Foundation is critical as we continue to navigate this disease and the changing needs of those who look to NKF each day for guidance, hope, and support. Together, we can help enhance the care and support of patients and their loved ones during these uncertain times when they need us to be their champions. I'm honored to be part of this time-honored tradition with so many of you who are maintaining your commitment to the kidney community and the National Kidney Foundation. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight and continuing to inspire all that we do for kidney patients and their families. God bless. Turning it back over to Michael. Michael, thank you for being here tonight.
And thank you for that, Rick. And thank you especially for reminding us why events like the Authors Luncheon are so important indeed. I want to get started with our panel discussion, which, as I said, may be more of a querying of me to the authors individually. But before we do, I want to share a few words from John Grisham, who is unfortunately not able to be with us tonight.
Hi, I'm John Grisham, coming to you virtually and not in person. Sorry I can't be there for the real event, but we're doing a lot of virtual events these days, and they seem to work just fine. Thank you for supporting the National Kidney Foundation Authors event. I'm delighted to take part and look forward to one day doing it live in color.
Many thanks to John for his contribution to this year's event. I know you'll enjoy him tomorrow at the annual luncheon. And to launch our authors discussion, I want to briefly introduce each author to you and let each author say a few words about their work, their book. And let me begin, if I may, with Britt Bennett. The first author we welcome tonight is Britt Bennett. Britt was born and raised in Southern California. She graduated from Stanford University and later earned an MFA in fiction at the University of Michigan. Britt has authored a couple of novels, both New York Times bestsellers. Her most recent novel, The Vanishing Half, was an instant success and is currently in production for an HBO series. And welcome, Britt. Good to have you with us. Tell us a little bit about your book.
Hi, thanks for having me. The Vanishing Half, it's a story about twin sisters, identical twins, who grow up inseparably and then decide to live their lives on different sides of the color line. One is a white woman and one is a black woman. So it's a story about family and about identity and this very complicated, very fractured family. And you follow them throughout a few different generations.
I'm sure many of the people who are attending not only tonight but tomorrow will look forward to reading you, and we'll be able to talk with you in a little more depth later. The second author we want to welcome is Marcia Goldman. And Marcia has spent really about the last 30 years focusing on providing therapeutic-based programs for children with autism and their families. She was what they call a special needs teacher for many years, and together with her 5-pound Yorkshire Terrier, Lola, she's a proud certified therapy dog, Lola is. They are authors together, they're a team, of the Lola Goes To series. Lola goes to work, Lola goes to the doctor, Lola goes to school, as well as Lola and Tattletale Zeke and Lola's teddy bear. And welcome, Marcia Goldman. Let's hear more about Lola and how you conceive of her.
Well, good evening. Thanks for having me. This is Lola, and Lola is a 12-year-old, 5-pound Yorkshire Terrier. And when I retired, I decided to give it a try and see what would happen, training her as a certified therapy dog. And the books came out of the visits. So we really were all about just visiting classrooms, doing story times, and reading therapy in libraries and schools, and visiting the elderly. And then the idea of writing the books kind of emerged from there.
And she is quite a kisser, isn't she?
She Lola licking. Having to sit here for a long time.
Well, next I want to welcome Eric Larson. Eric was with me, perhaps some of you heard earlier last week, talking about his book on the forum program with me. And also, I did an interview with him, had the privilege of doing an interview with him for Book Passage, which is part of the series of authors that Book Passage has on their website. Eric has roots in journalism. He has a master's degree from Columbia, and he worked for the Wall Street Journal and Time Magazine, and has had stories in the New Yorker, Atlantic, and Harper's, and that was just kind of for a warm-up. His work has been published in 20 countries, with more than 9 million copies sold, and he's the author of 5 national bestsellers, including Devil in the White City. He's which was a finalist for the National Book Award, and the newest book, which he'll tell us something about, is all about Churchill and the Blitz. Eric, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Michael. So, I don't have a dog to cuddle, but I do have a Winston Churchill little mug here. So this is my companion for this. My book is The Splendid and the Vile. It is about Churchill's first year as prime minister. And the whole goal of the book was to try to come to terms with how exactly Churchill and his family and his advisors dealt with the intense German air campaign that lasted pretty much the entire first year of his administration. And that's the term, by the way, Splendid and the Vile, comes from a diary entry by one of the key characters in the book.
Thank you, Eric. It's quite a read. So is the author's book we're going to talk about next, or he's going to talk about it and give you a little preview and introduction to it. His name is Jason Rosenthal, and Jason is many things. He's a father, he's an author, lawyer, public speaker. He's also the subject of an essay written by his wife, Amy Krauss Rosenthal, called You May Want to Marry My Husband. It was written just 10 days before Amy died of ovarian cancer, tragically, in 2017. That column went viral as part of the Modern Love series in the New York Times and was read literally by millions. And I'll let Jason share how that has inspired his work, his parenting, and really who he is today. Jason.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really just honored to be a part of this wonderful panel of authors. My book, My Wife Said You May Want to Marry Me, is a memoir in 3 parts. And so in the first part of the book, I talk a lot about my relationship with Amy, who herself was a very accomplished author and has been in this event in the past, and a little bit about what it was like to raise a family with her. The second part of the book is really a little bit tough, but it's a raw and honest discussion of what it's like to be with someone you love at the end of their life, and maybe a little bit of guidance about how to speak to someone who's going through loss and grief. And the third part of my book, I hope, is uplifting, and it really discusses what it's like to find resilience in an unexpected way in the face of a tragic loss.
Thank you, Jason. A poignant book, and congratulations to all of the authors for the work that they've produced that we are celebrating here and that we're focusing on. And Amy Rosenthal was someone whom I had the privilege of knowing. In fact, we have the same literary agent, and she was a wonderful woman. And Jason really, in many ways, has given her a great testament here. Finally, saving our local treasure for last, I want to introduce Gail Tsukiyama. She was born and raised in San Francisco and attended San Francisco State, where I've been a professor for many, many years. Unfortunately, I didn't have her as a student, but I feel I know her from her work. And she did actually undergrad and master's work there and has taught at universities, a number of them throughout the Bay Area, San Francisco State, as well as UC Berkeley and Mills College. She's the author of 7 novels, including Woman of Silk, The Language of Thread, Samurai Garden, and The Street of a Thousand Blossoms. Her latest novel is The Color of Air. It was published in July of 2020. And Gail, welcome. Tell us something about The Color of Air.
Thank you, Michael. It's so good to be back at the Kidney Foundation Authors Luncheon and to be back with you. I've known Michael for a long time because the first time I was at the Kidney Luncheon was in 2001. And Michael was hosting, and I remember meeting him for the first time and being enthralled by here's this man who has done this for so long and is such a celebrity within the San Francisco Bay Area. My latest book, the 8th book, is called The Color of Air. It takes place over 6 weeks during a Mauna Loa volcano eruption on the Big Island of Hawaii in 1935. It's about a young man who returns to the community of Hilo, where he grew up among the sugar and pineapple plantations. And he was 10 years away in the mainland studying to be a doctor. As he returns, the volcano is erupting, and along with it comes a lot of secrets and truths that he discovers during the 6 weeks that the lava flows.
So Mauna Loa, famous volcano that erupted back in 1935, and Gail brings it alive in her novel. I must say, I was thinking that years ago, as a professor of literature, there was an aphorism that used to sort of bounce around in my consciousness. It was that writing is 1% inspiration and 90% perspiration. And I thought for many years that was an aphorism that was bequeathed to us by Mark Twain. I found out a number of years ago that it actually comes from Thomas Edison, who was talking about genius, but it could apply to many writers as well. And I thought we would begin by talking about something that's always intrigued me as someone who has interviewed many writers, and that is the mystery of what makes us write, what makes people want to write and bring birth to a book, because it is kind of a mystery. It's a mystery of drive, and it's a mystery that sometimes we have to reckon with, even though we're driven by it in ways we don't even understand. I'm speaking as someone who's authored a few books myself. I just recently, as early as this morning, had a former student of mine write me and say, I don't know if I'm writing for an audience or for myself. I haven't even determined yet, but he was trying to write fiction. And I was reminded of something that a novelist said, and I'd like to begin with the novelists and have them address this. It was E.L. Doctorow, who I had the privilege of interviewing a couple of times, and he said that writing is like driving at night in the fog. You can only see as far as the headlights, but you can make it the whole trip through. What actually inspires you to do all the perspiring that is involved and the passion that's involved in writing? And what do you begin with? And Gail, since we heard from you last, I'd like to begin with you. Why write? And who do you write for?
Why write? I think it's more of a situation where you cannot not write. I'm always thinking stories, they come at the oddest time. Not when you say sweat, I think the sweat comes as when I can't write. I go into the yard and I do work there, and that's when I start thinking in a way that makes me want to write. I think the whole process is you're born with a story in your head with words that kind of are always moving around, and you can't help but put it on the page. I don't think it's a choice. I think writing chooses you at a certain time in your life, and you can't let it go. So even when you're sweating, even when it's tough, you put it aside and you know that it's going to come back. The words just kind of embrace you.
I like that description that you have. It's just very engaging, just the notion that the writing takes you over and that you have to write. You choose, you can't make the choice. You don't even have free will, perhaps, to decide not to write. Let me go to you, Britt, if I may. And Britt Bennett, let me hear what you have to say about this. Does that resonate for you, what you just heard from Gail?
Yeah, I think so. I think just sort of logistically speaking, I mean, writing is really the only thing that I've ever quite loved and ever really been good at. I think I don't think that I've ever been the type of person who's had like an array of skills that they could actually do. So it's always felt like something that was something that I love to do, and also something that felt urgent. I think for me, it's always about writing to discover what I think about something, writing to discover what I feel about something, writing to try to unravel something that is thorny and complicated, and often not arriving at any type of clear answer, but arriving at, I guess, greater clarity about the questions that I have about what drives people and what drives relationships and where we are kind of located within this world. So I think for me, it's always been something that I've wanted to do and have kind of needed to do. And I think what your student said is true. I think there is a sense of writing for yourself, but also hopefully writing for larger readers to enjoy too.
But you're ignited by those questions, aren't you? That's what I'm assuming from what you just said. That it's the questions that engage you that you have to find some sense of answer or synthesis for.
I think so. I mean, I think I always try to start with the question. I think that's where I usually try to begin. I don't want to start writing something if I already know what I think about it. That's always been deeply uninteresting. So I think really, driving that question and trying to figure out some type of clarity of what you think or what you feel.
I think that could probably resonate for some of the other writers too. I wanted to begin with the novelist because I think that writing fiction is a different state of mind. It's almost in some ways, as I've read, certainly interviewed a host of fiction writers in my day, and they often talk about it as almost an alternate state of consciousness, and you're being driven and so forth. And I know Eric Larson's work well enough, and as I said, recently had a couple of interviews with him to know that he's driven in many ways by looking for answers as well. But recently, and the most recent interview we did, and Eric, I'd like you to talk about this a little bit. Your move from Seattle to New York was really a major inspiration for you because suddenly there you were in New York thinking of 9/11, and that was really an epiphany moment.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we moved from Seattle. We have three daughters. The daughters, fled the coop, as daughters should and did. And we decided to move to Manhattan. That was probably more my motivation than my wife's. As soon as we arrived in the city, I did have this kind of epiphany. We had watched 9/11 unfold in real time from Seattle, as most of us did around the world. But when I got to New York, I realized how much more vivid and awful this whole experience was. Because, this was their hometown was attacked. And so I started thinking, well, how would it have been in London when during the peak of the Blitz, there were 57 consecutive nights of bombing, if you will, 57 consecutive 9/11s. And how on earth do you get through that? And one thing led to another. And I thought, well, why not write about the quintessential London family, Churchill, his family, and his advisors? And that's what led to my book, The Splendid and the Vile. I would say one thing, though, Michael, hearing the novelists talk about writing, it's the same with nonfiction. I mean, I have been compelled to write ever since I was a kid, just absolutely driven. There was nothing else that I would do, and nothing else probably that I could do. But anyway.
Well, I've often said that you write like a novelist, and you have those gifts as a historian to write very suspenseful and engaging narrative. And I know many of our listeners, the people who are with us today virtually tonight and so forth, have appreciated that as I have in your work. And Marcia Goldman, I guess it was sort of wanting to go back to your roots as the kind of teacher you were that certainly had a lot with making you feel the compulsion to write. And talk about that. I mean, what was really driving you?
Well, listening to these amazing authors, I feel like I'm not really one of you, but I think over the years especially working with children on the spectrum, I had trained my brain to think in as few words as possible. And so my task in writing these books is not only to, write about typical 3 to 7 year old challenges and how to face them, but to write in as few words on a page instead of the other way around. And then what I was really the driving force was I knew that the children I was working with aren't always able to understand illustration at a young age. And so I knew I wanted photographs. And if I could find a book with photographs that even looked somewhat like Lola, and they just weren't out there. So that's kind of what drove me to see what I could do.
You have the distinction of having a Yorkshire Terrier that not only is licking her face, but that you've made famous. Amy Tan did that as well with her Yorkshire Terriers. I want to mention.
We were friends, yeah.
Jason, let me bring Jason Rosenthal into this. And Jason, obviously you wanted to honor Amy as you do in this book, and also, I suppose, go through, well, the catharsis, really, I suppose, is maybe one of the best words to use here. I know it's a difficult word because it's kind of jargonish, but I think it sums up what your book epitomizes. That is, bringing those last, well, unfortunately, the last days of your wife and your loving relationship with her into a way that other people could get access to. But talk about why it was vital to you, because I believe it was, to tell that story, to tell your story and her story of your marriage.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it started as I began to speak publicly about Amy and about some of the issues that were important to me, which I wasn't hearing a lot about discussed in this country. And that is how difficult it is to be with someone you love at the end of their life. And so, that and the combination of Amy thrusting me into the spotlight as a result of that really crazy viral essay that she wrote led me to want to talk a little bit about our relationship as well. And so, it became important to me to share our story and to share some pretty difficult topics about grief and loss, but also to frame it in a way that it affected my life, which was that like I said in the introduction, I found a way to become resilient in really surprising and in unexpected ways. I lived with Amy, who was an incredible writer. And
I'm sorry, we had a little crosstalk because I lost you for a moment. But were you? I just wondered, were you besieged as a widower as a result of that Modern Love column where she said, "My husband is a great husband and he deserves someone after I go"?
I was indeed inundated with responses, absolutely. And they still trickle in to this day, to be honest with you. But yes, I was overwhelmed with an outpouring of really just, at the end of the day, it was support and love for Amy and for me and for our family, and wanting to make sure that we were okay.
And I wonder if what the other authors have said about writing and being compelled to write, particularly almost as if it takes over your will, does that resonate also for you? Jason?
For me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was a very, very quiet guy living a life that people hardly, could discover me even in a Google search. But um, because of what happened to me as a result of the essay, yes, I felt compelled to write, and I really enjoyed the process of writing, and it has stuck with me, even after this book was published.
It is. I wonder if any of you would just like to comment, though, on the nature of the commitment to writing a book, because it's not only writing the book and going through the editing process, but then, of course, you have to promote the book, you have to sell the book. You work, most of you, I presume, with editors. There's a great deal of importance with respect to finding the right tone, finding the correct language, finding the voice that suits you best, and so forth. I mean, it can be a colossal undertaking. For some people, it just comes naturally, and yet you have to constantly kind of challenge yourself. I'd like to just throw that out, and whoever wants to opine on it, please feel free.
Well, if I could address one aspect of that, is that, if I could address one aspect of that, is that it is a monumental undertaking, but it's best not to think about it in those terms. I feel that writing a book, especially the kind of thing that I do, where you do a lot of research first, and then you write the book, and then comes the rest of it. It's really, I often think of it more as a process of erosion. It's something that you have to do just in relatively small bites. Like for me, I work 7 days a week except Christmas Day. I work until noon, and I always stop where I know I'm going to be able to pick up first thing in the morning. But if you ever start writing a book and you think, oh boy, I'm going to write this in 6 months, so I know where this is going to end, you're doomed. It really is this long, long, deep commitment.
I've talked enough to writers through the years to know that just the truth of what Eric has just said is almost axiomatic. That is, you have to sit down, and I think it was Michael Chabon who once said to me, you have to get your rear end on there and just commit yourself to it and do it, if possible, every day or as much as you're capable of doing it. How does that sound to the rest of you? Is it in sync with your own experiences, and can you address that? Anybody?
I agree with Eric. What Eric had said. I always look at the process of the Chinese adage, see one step, take one step, because I write like that. I mean, I know we all write differently. Some of us use outlines. Some of us use index cards that they pin up on the wall, and they know every character's movement. I have a poetry background, so it's always been one line after another. So it's always been one step after another. I wish I had Eric's working habit. He sounds like he's got it down in terms. There are times when I sit down and an hour goes by and I'm reading a book. I'm reading somebody else's book, but thankfully I also use a lot of research in my work. And so I spend a great deal of time reading also, but I find sometimes that it can kind of take over. I don't know if Eric has that problem.
Oh yeah.
Eric, back to you.
Say what?
Do you face the blank pages periodically?
I'm sorry, I missed that question.
Face the blank pages, or find your mind wandering, or or you just pretty much stick to it with the commitment and do it
actually,
zealously?
I have. When I'm in the writing phase, actually, I have developed a secret weapon. So, and so I don't actually ever confront an empty page. I'm glad to say, because what I've developed is that, I write. I never binge write. That's the path to destruction. I write to a point where I know I can begin the next day. I'll stop in the middle of a paragraph, middle of a sentence sometimes, because the next day then I will be able to get up, get my cup of coffee, get my Oreo cookie, sit down, and I know I will be instantly productive. I will finish that sentence, finish that paragraph. But the beauty of the human mind is that if you leave something unfinished overnight, your mind will process that even though you're not aware of it. And so the next morning when I sit down and finish that sentence, I also know where the next probably 5 pages are going. But I don't write those 5 pages, I write 3 or 4 so that the next morning I can start the process over again. And that's the way I avoid the blank page, which would terrify me.
Well, you have an indefatigable work ethic. I wonder if some of the other authors might want to comment on the vagaries that are often involved in writing, or the vicissitudes, maybe. I'm thinking in V's, like an alliterative English professor. But I'm just mentioning this because, sometimes the ideas don't come, and sometimes you find yourself struggling, and there are too many diversions that get you away from writing. Does that seem to speak to some of you, or some of you want to speak to that?
I usually watch a movie.
You find yourself watching a movie when you feel you should be writing?
A lot of times, a lot of times, no, when I can't write, what I do is I step away from the writing because it's just like looking at a wall for me. So what I do is I turn off the computer and I try to do something totally different, like, go shopping when you could, or watch a movie, because watching a movie is actually watching a book unfold visually. So a lot of times I watch and I see how they move from scene to scene, and it's very helpful. And a lot of times it's just getting away from it. And then when I turn on the computer again the next day, it revives itself. I go back and I read forward and I start working again.
That's similar to what we were hearing from Eric. Does anybody have any thoughts about, just how you rev yourself up and get out of, I don't like to use writer's block because I did a whole program once on writer's block, and it was amazing how many people went to the archives to hear that one program through the years. But how do you get yourself engaged more or challenged more, particularly when you are pretty much in it, when you're committed to writing the book and seeing it to the finish line? Any tactics, any techniques?
I think I would just jump in and say, I think for myself, part of it, I think, is trying to diagnose why I feel blocked, because sometimes I am just bored with what I'm working on, and that's a really important thing to realize when you're bored, that you need to make a different decision and you need to go in the direction of what's actually interesting and exciting you. And sometimes I can't write because I'm scared, and that's like a different thing that you have to process, because a lot of times you have to go in the direction of what scares you about what you're writing and not running away from it. So that's a different thing to notice about your writing, I think, than when you are just bored with what you're working on, or any other sort of various things that can kind of stop you. So I think for me, that's really the most important thing, is trying to figure out why I am blocked. And then it might be have to just push through it and try to write the thing that scares me. Or it might be, this is actually an uninteresting thing. I need to go in a different direction.
Don't you find, Britt, I have a sneaking suspicion or intuition, tell me if I'm wrong about this, that you really get engaged by your own characters. I mean, and to some extent, I would suspect maybe they surprise you.
I think they do, and I think honestly that's the part of drafting that I really live for. I don't outline really. I don't really plan as I'm writing, but I think that's the joy of it for me, is those moments of surprise and those moments where the story goes in a completely different direction than I previously thought it might.
That's the excitement of being a novelist, or one of the exciting things, although it happens with probably every type of book. I wonder, Marcia Goldman, if you could maybe talk about the joy you get out of writing once you have committed yourself to this whole series of books that you've read. The pleasure, the delight. Talk about that.
How terrifying it is to get the pictures done. The story is pretty simple and easy for me to get onto paper, but then the big challenge is the photographs. And I have tried twice now to hire a professional, and Lola just will not do anything for anyone other than me. So, and I'm fortunate she has a wonderfully expressive face, but I have about a week span once I start that I have to complete all the pictures for the book because that's about all she'll give me. And string cheese helps a lot, but beyond a few days of being photographed, we've had it. And the last book I just finished a couple weeks ago involved a goldfish as well. And that was a bit challenging to get a dog and a goldfish to perform for me, but we did it.
That dog looks at you with the adoration that I think she'd do anything for you. But it's interesting, the photography is the more challenging part for you by far, from what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Well, I'm anything but a photographer, but I've had to learn. I keep upgrading my camera because she takes a beautiful picture, but the story doesn't come through unless it's being photographed by me, I guess.
What kind of camera do you use? There always people want to know that.
Oh, it's bigger than I am at this point. I could barely hold it, but it's, your old-fashioned manual, focus the lens camera.
And
It's
Jason,
hard to get a
let me go
gold.
back to you on this whole question again of how you get yourself motivated, particularly during those periods when things aren't necessarily flowing like the Euphrates or like you'd like them to be flowing.
Yeah, I think I was a trial lawyer for 30 years. And so I worked well with deadlines. And so I worked in small chunks of time. And, the person who I witnessed in my own house write for all of that period of time, Amy, was so prolific and was able to accomplish so much in terms of her writing in a very short period of time. So that was one of the models that I had to go on.
So we've got just a little bit of time left. I wonder if any of you would have some advice, really. There are people here who are parents and grandparents this evening who would like to encourage their children or grandchildren to write a bit of wisdom, perhaps, or maybe even just a dollop of wisdom that you would have to offer an aspiring writer.
My advice is
parents and grandparents themselves. By the way, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please. Anybody.
Well, my advice is, to just sit there at your desk, and be there. Don't wait for inspiration. It's like what I always have told my writing students, those rare occasions when I actually do teach, is like, if you're waiting for a bus, it really helps to be at the bus stop. That's my advice.
Yeah, that's good wisdom. Thank you, Eric, for that. Sit yourself down and do the work as much as you possibly can. I started with that quote of Doctorow's, which I liked. I thought, by the way, when I heard him say that in an interview, that he had said it to me, but then I saw this happens with the interviewing process sometimes. You get something that seems very original, and yet, as every writer and every speaker, particularly who's done much writing and much speaking, knows, sometimes you have to go back to the bon mots and to the anecdotes that serve you best. Just one example will serve. One of my earliest interviews was on stage with the Nobel Prize-winning Yiddish writer Isaac Bashevis Singer, and I said to him, and this was a wonderful exchange. I thought it was original, but then I saw it later on in a scholarly journal with another interviewer. In other words, I thought it was fresh with me, and it wasn't. This is not to say that anybody didn't speak freshly this evening or didn't speak originally, but it was a bit of an enlightenment for me to realize when I asked him if he believed in free will, he said, with this great Yiddish accent, I have no choice. So I thought that all of you acquitted yourself very well in this discussion, and I thank you for that. Grateful for it. Britt, Marcia, Eric, Jason, Gail, thank you all. And thank you for really what was an enlightening discussion, and I certainly hope an illuminating one for those who listened and those who were with us tonight, and for offering our guests insight into your process. I thoroughly enjoyed the exchange, and I thank you for it, and thank you for it. And before we actually wrap up tonight, I want to bring back Amy Hewitt. Amy?
Thank you so much, Michael. Wow, that was just so fantastic. What a treat for our audience. I don't think as I mentioned earlier, I don't think we've had the chance of doing something like this before, and it was really quite special. So thank you all for sharing with us and being a part of tonight and creating this unique opportunity for all of our VIPs. So thank you. I just want to, before we wrap up, remind you of why we're here this weekend and why we get together for the authors. It's really to help those impacted by these. And as Rick mentioned earlier, your support is needed now more than ever. So just wanted to share some reminders about how you can support us. You can use you can text to to 76278 and start to participate in our silent auction. We've got some really fantastic packages, many of which are from our authors here tonight. They can join a virtual book club. There's some travel packages there, some golf packages. So really for whatever your desires are, where you like to spend your relaxing time, we've got a package. So classes, lots of virtual offerings. So I really encourage you to take a look around. You can go into the link that's on the landing page, and the auction will be open through 6 p.m. tomorrow. So please take advantage and browse around. You can also buy books. You can also buy wine. We're so grateful for their support. So please take advantage of that opportunity. And then also, again, remember your support is so meaningful for us, and we hope you will consider making a gift this weekend. So thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Back to you, Michael.
And thank you. Give often and give as much as you always say. I want to again thank Britt, Marcia, Eric, Jason, and Gail for an enlightening discussion. I also want to say this has been a special evening for me, and I hope for all of you. And I want to once again express gratitude for all of the event sponsors and the volunteers who made the 2020 event possible. Tonight was for you, and I hope you too enjoyed the unique view into this year's presenting authors and their work. And that brings us to the conclusion of our time together. We want to encourage you to check out online auction, which will close tomorrow at 6 p.m. You can also visit the online store where you can purchase books, wine, and more. But before we close this evening, let's take a moment to honor the memory of Sandy Copeland. She was a much beloved member of our community, as her son David and his wife Erica have told us. They can attest to the fact that she knew the Authors Luncheon as one of her favorite gatherings, and she attended all 31 of them. We'll miss her grace and spirit, and are grateful for having known her. Grateful for having been with all of you. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And as I like to say at the end of my broadcast now, in the wake of this pandemic, please stay safe. I'm Michael Krasny.
Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes our broadcast.